Hello and welcome back to the Noise Filter Podcast. This week's guest is JF. JF, could you give us a little rundown of what you do and inform the people?
Well, when I'm very optimistic, I like to think that I'm an author or an aspiring author. It's not my full-time job, but it's what I try to identify as, if you will. I'm a dumb person because I would like to say, oh, I'm a horror writer or I'm a science fiction author. I have 2 books out and they are each in very different genres. So I'm a fiction writer, if you will.
Okay.
My day job is actually marketing director, which doesn't show in the way I actually approach marketing my writing. I'm a very bad person when it comes to marketing myself, and mostly because when I do get to the writing part, the only thing that interests me is the actual writing and some of the industry. I don't spend as much time as I probably should just sitting down and promoting myself and doing the market research necessary. Yeah. Which is why I have a book that's about robots. It's extremely optimistic, very lighthearted, has some themes about motherhood. And then the other book I have is about horror and existential terror and murders in a small town. The crossover audience is slimmer than I want it to be.
The Venn diagram isn't quite what you would hope for.
It looks like breasts. And not like a single donut as I would have wanted to be.
No. I think it's good to like have the opportunity to do different styles of things and be free enough to like be able to sort of transition if you so wish. Obviously it is difficult to marry those 2 audiences, I'd imagine, but if people like your writing, sometimes that is enough, isn't it? Like we both have an interest in Andrew Mayne. He's done very different types of books, and I like his writing style, and I kind of quite happy to follow that author, through what he wants to show. So I'm a big fan of that.
Absolutely. And the thing is though, is that there's a difference between, say, my career and Andrew Mayne's career. Andrew Mayne is successful. I am aspiring to success. Yeah. But mostly also we're coming at it from very different angles. Andrew Mayne is already established as Andrew Mayne and has a following that's built around his persona as a podcaster, as a magician. He's got, like, when an Andrew Mayne book comes out, Andrew Mayne is pretty much the first thing. It's the important part of the brand. Meanwhile, from where I'm coming from, I work very much in the private sector, in the corporate sector as a marketing director and graphic designer. So when I'm trying to build an audience, nobody cares about who JF Dubeau is yet, and I hope forever, but no, it's not going to happen. Like, that's not good marketing. But no one cares who I am. What needs to come first is a story. Yeah. And when I create a story that is about robots and future, and it's all like gleaming spaceships and very neat, clean things, and that is what attracts a part of the audience, and I start building an audience from that, and then I turn around and I present my next book and I say, hey, this is again from me, but there's birds being splattered on a wall to create this magic mural. It's different for them, and they may not find it cool in the same way. So if they liked the writing and they liked the sort of personality I project and the interaction I've had with them, they'll stick around for the second book. But if they wanted more robots in space, then the departure works against me. And some will be forgiving and say, well, I'll wait for him to go back to robots. But some will say, well, that guy is a screwball and is not going to give me what I wanted in the first place. Or the reverse is, I put out a horror book and people want to see, well, okay, this is a horror book. I like horror. What else did this guy write? Oh, it's this dumb thing about robots, and I don't like robots, and this is not horror at all, so I'm not going to read a second book. So it's a difficult place to come from to split the audience that way. Yeah. It's a bit of a miracle that I haven't shot myself in the foot completely out of the industry. Yeah. I take comfort in that. But that being said, it's because I'm doing the artist mistake that I know I shouldn't do, which is basically just, oh, I follow my muse I go with where the inspiration takes me instead of being, a bit smarter and saying, okay, well, I want to write horror next, but since right now I'm just building my brand first, I'll finish my robot phase to build the audience, and then I'll split to something else. Like there's a method
Yeah.
to leveraging that creativity. There's a way of being smarter and more methodical about how you unleash your creativity, and I did not do that.
No.
I just
Just
followed
went for
my
it.
instincts like an animal.
Yeah, I think sometimes following your bliss is how we kind of move forwards, isn't it? You can't you don't as a new writer, I suspect that you don't necessarily know 2 years down the line that you want to be doing something. You might find something that you like, and then you want to like follow that. So I understand that. I sing in a 1940s 50s swing band, and my next band might be something completely different, and not capitalize on any of the work that was done. But sometimes you need to change, don't you? So yes. So how did you start? What was your sort of inroads into writing? How did you how long ago did you start, and how did you get into it?
Well, I've been telling stories in one form or another for a very long time. I was very much a comic book person for most of my youth.
Okay.
I did a lot of role-playing games. I wasn't a super popular amongst my role-playing groups because where everybody wanted to sit down and really crunch some math and kill a lot of kobolds in fancy ways that involved numbers. I just wanted to tell cool stories between the characters, so I wanted to chat with the other characters. Or when I was part of the storytelling, I was in charge of being the storyteller or the game master. I would start my games with like a 2-page narrative of what the story was, and so far this is what we've got, and like with pieces of dialogues between like the antagonists and the villains, really trying to be very cinematic about it, which worked very well for other players that wanted that kind of stuff. But
Yeah.
for asshole Carl, who just wants to kill kobolds, he would be asleep or elbow deep in the Cheetos very quickly during those games. I've always wanted, like, ask anyone on the street if they want to write a book. 9 out of 10 people will say yes, but very few actually do it. And I was
Yeah.
one of those 9 out of 10. Like, oh yeah, I want to write a book. Well, I wasn't writing a book, so it's questionable how much I wanted to.
Yeah.
Until about 7 years ago, I did the National Novel Writing Month Challenge, which is to, during the month of November, of which we are right now,
Yeah.
just write a 50,000 word novel and see if you can do that. And I decided, you know what? I keep talking about wanting to write a book. I'm one of those jerks who keeps saying, I'm gonna write a book. You'll see, like one day, the great American novel. It's in my head, and one just needs to be on paper. Like I was one of those guys, until eventually, like I found this challenge. I said, you know what? I'm either gonna do this or shut up about it.
Yeah.
And I started writing, and halfway through the month, I realized that what I thought was supposed to be the hurdle, what I thought was supposed to be the hard work and the sweat and the blood, was actually the fun part. Essentially, the writing portion, the portion where I sit down at the computer or I sit down in front of an iPad, whatever form it takes, and I create the characters and have them interact and create the plots and have everything move and try to bring those ideas to life and flesh them out. That is the fun part. And it's also then that I sort of started realizing, because back then I was also starting to do some more public facing things, I also at the same time realized that a lot of the things that everyone who wants to be a writer really wants, the signing books, having crowds around you, and being recognized, were all things that were aberrant to me. I love interacting with people who read my book and talking about the book, and will mostly divert it to what their projects are. I'm almost like I'm happy talking about my stories, but I want to hear about their stories also.
Yeah.
So I've, like, the very few signings I've done, it's not that I hated them, it's just it feels weird to have strangers come up to you and talk to you about your work and how important it is to them in a way. And like I was at Nerdtacular convention this summer, and someone asked to take a selfie with me, and this is not the kind of like I'm not saying like if you want a selfie with me, don't ask. It's just not something that I crave or feel super comfortable with it.
No, it's a strange thing to have adulation, isn't it? It's an odd
Yeah.
it's an odd thing to receive, especially unfettered in the sense that someone is coming up to you, you don't know anything about them, and then they, that is an odd feeling, isn't it?
It's just that I'm not someone who collects signatures myself. Like I don't have a very clear understanding of the value behind it.
No.
So when people are asking me for signed copies of my books, I have a lot of difficulty. Like my question in my mind is automatically like, why would you want that? And I have to like, it's one of those things in life where you have to say, well, what I value and what other people value can be different, but that doesn't change that it can be important. It's not important to me, but it's important to them. And because it's important to them, that means it's important, period.
Yeah.
And I just accept that and move on from that. And since then, I've kind of very much loosened my attitude towards it. There's a couple of, I'm accumulating a few signed things, not necessarily as passionate as a lot of other people are, but I'm starting to maybe be jealous of that passion.
Yeah. It's a strange thing. I mean, I have signatures of bands that I met that, like bands that I met as a child, and like really treasure those things because it's the moment that you met somebody that you aspire, someone that you like, admire is memorized in this like this physical, tangible thing that you can then see, and it's like a trip back to that kind of experience, isn't it? So I think I can understand that, but it is odd being on the other side of that and being the person doing that and offering that to somebody, being somebody's hero is a strange thing for sure.
Yeah, I don't know that anybody's turned to me and says, yeah, this guy's my hero.
No, okay, but
if anybody's kind of like leaning that way, don't. My life's a mess. I'm not an example to anyone.
It's yeah, oh yeah, it's fair enough. I have people at gigs come up and sort of want to do all of that stuff, and it is surreal. It is absolutely surreal. It doesn't feel like you should be that person. It feels like somebody else. It feels like somebody else's role in life. So when you've been we are both from that the community of the Diamond Club. I suppose that's in a community that everybody. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Any creative aspires to that kind of situation, don't they? It's like the perfect group of people all coming together and interacting in a way that like hopefully brings everybody up a little bit, and it's sort of a mutual group of friends that can sort of support each other. And your first book, I can remember it being submitted on Diamond Time, and like I can vividly remember it, and it must be really exciting to like have something that was supported via community to kind of happen.
Well, I have a very weird relationship with Diamond Club because I'm not someone who's extremely participatory. Like I will very often lurk, more often than not even on my own nickname on Chat Realm.
Yeah. Because
I log in and listen and sometimes look at the chat while I'm doing something else, and I adore the community. I can recognize most of the names there because I see them do things and I see them participate, but I don't really chat much, which makes me feel extremely guilty whenever I go on Diamond Time and say, hey guys, can you help me? Yeah. None of you know anything about me because I'm the quiet jerk in the corner who's just like, I'm at the prom, but I'm not dancing with anyone.
Yeah.
Nor am I walking in the limelight. I'm just sitting next to the punch bowl, getting slowly drunk and spiking it once in a while. But so I feel guilty coming to the community for help, but at the same time, the Diamond Club community is in a very strange way. Like I know the two hosts, Justin and Brian, the two hosts of Diamond Time of Night Attack, refers to them as the demon hordes of the internet, but in a way, like they do act very aggressively funny, very dedicated to the cause, but at the same time, because of how honest Andrew, Brian, Justin have been about their process, and how most of the people in that community have been there for a very long time, since the beginning. They have a keen understanding. I don't think they even realize it, but to a man and to a woman in that community, they have an understanding of the importance of community for creatives that most people on the internet just don't get.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that makes that community extremely precious and extremely important, not just for people like me, but just amongst themselves and in general. So, yay! No, I absolutely love the Diamond Club. I've been, quote unquote, like my level of activity. I've been active since the time of the Diamond Club book project, which I found was the absolute genius, and the level of participation was amazing.
It's a fascinating thing. But the thing that I was thinking was, how do you foster your own community? Do you have like a group of people that are interested in what you do? And is there any information on how you sort of keep that? Do you take any lessons from sort of the things that you've liked about the Diamond Club and try and transition that into your own?
No, absolutely. There's a couple of things. Like, again, this is where I do apply some of my marketing know-how. Is I've looked at dissecting some of the online communities that seem to work, and a lot of them are very difficult to translate verbatim to my situation.
Yeah.
Again, coming from the outside and building a platform from scratch means that I can't really leverage any existing community. The only thing I can do is sort of leech a bit like a parasite on existing communities of other people. But at the same time, I want to be careful about that, because the very important thing that I've learned from the successful communities that I admire, there are more successful communities, but I don't necessarily have any admiration for them, because the way they function, I couldn't do that.
Yeah.
But the thing about the Diamond Club community, or the Tadpole community from Frog Pants Network, is that they're communities that are based on a lot of transparency, openness, and honesty. And if there's anything I've learned from these communities, is how to bring that to my own platform and keep that coming.
Yeah.
And anybody that comes to the platform from, say, the Diamond Club, or say Tadpole, or any other community, I will absolutely credit the fact that they are coming from something greater than I am, and be very grateful that I am allowed and able and lucky enough to be in a position to have people like my work enough that they'll include me in that.
Yeah.
So it's, if anything, like I've learned a lot from the After Things podcast that Andrew and Justin and Brian do, and on how to try to grow a community. There's a lot of things I'm trying to do, obviously, like the whole newsletter things, and it's a lot of work. It's very difficult, but again, as far as community is concerned, the whole transparency and honesty thing, I think, is what has been the most influential. It makes for a slower growing community.
Yeah.
Because it's not about catering to whims, and it's not about sort of bending over to the wants of the community, but rather about organically creating a transparent space where people will see their own reflection in. And it'll grow organically, but it'll grow into something a lot more solid, and that's what I want. Especially going back to the beginning of the discussion, if I want to be the kind of author where I am going to one day write science fiction, the next day write horror, and then write a young adult fiction, or then write, I don't know, a romance novel, I need to have readers that'll trust me.
Yeah.
They need to go, okay, well, this is a romance novel. It doesn't have monsters like I like to have monsters, but it's written by JF, and so far JF hasn't tricked me into anything. Or when he has tricked me, it's been it's been worth it.
Yeah.
So it behooves me to have that transparency, if I want in 5, 10, 20, the moment before I die, to have exactly what I'm looking for as far as a writing environment. I need to go in that direction, and that's what I'm copying from them.
Yeah, no, that's good. So yeah, I agree. I think transparency is a massive part of what I enjoy about the podcast we listen to. I listen to Harmon Town, and Dan Harmon is a very transparent and honest, and I think that is actually quite right. Is that the honesty is what we enjoy. I suspect it's that reality. It's like I don't know. For me, it's that people that are just honest, and that's what kind of makes it interesting, isn't it? I suppose.
Yeah, and there it's weird because there's this kind of mistake. I see a lot of podcasts that call themselves very transparent and honest because they record directly to hard drive and they don't edit and say, oh, they call it having all the warts and everything. But that's not transparency. That's just bad production. The transparency is much more in the content itself. Like, you can have a cleanly produced podcast that's very slick and still be extremely transparent if the subjects that you talk about and how you talk about them and how you talk about yourself and your level of self-awareness is there, that you explain it. Like, a very simple example, like for the Overcast, the podcast I host with Amy Frost about the game Overwatch.
Yeah.
We're very transparent about things, but Amy also does a lot of work cleaning up our audio and making sure that we have the highest production quality that we can for just two people doing this for fun with no money involved.
Yeah.
So, but we're also very transparent about that. We will be very clear, like, oh no, we edited JF swearing for 2 straight minutes because Overwatch is a very family-friendly game. We're trying to have a family-friendly podcast. So when JF just says the C word for a minute straight because he's angry about a troll or something, we edit that out, or we bleep it with Bastion sounds, whatever. Well, but that's the thing. Like, you can be honest and still have a clean product.
Yes, very true. Well,
and the opposite.
What inspired the Overcast? Obviously, a love of Overwatch, obviously, but how did that get going?
I'm a gargantuan nerd about weird things, in the sense that I will get extremely passionate about very, very narrow things. When 2 years ago, almost to the day actually, 2 years ago, or was it more than that? I think it was 3 years ago, when they first announced Overwatch, there was this cinematic, which was essentially a very Pixar type animation, and you've got a giant gorilla with armor and this sniper chick, and there's robots, and it was cute yet violent, and basically it just ticked every checkbox on my this is the kind of game I love and this is the kind of setting I want.
Yeah.
I was elbow deep into prepping things for Life Engineered back then, so I was very much into my big robot phase, if you will.
Yeah.
And I was just absolutely flipping out about this game and about the setting, mostly the setting, but the game was also interesting because I like MOBAs, but I don't like first-person shooters too much, but the mix of the two seemed to really touch me.
Yeah. So,
and not Priest touch me, just like more,
classic.
Yeah, exactly. More cleaner. So I was freaking out, but I felt like I was freaking out about it in a silo because everybody around me, their reaction was like, yeah, that does look neat. And I'm just ready to buy all the t-shirts and the action figures, and I want in on this game so hard that I'm annoying everyone around me except my friend Amy, who's like, no, I get it. I also am flipping out. And after a few months of flipping out and watching some of the rumors, we just need to once a week get together for an hour and flip out about the game together to get it out of our system. We said might as well record it and call that a podcast. Yeah. Which we decided to do. And Amy already had some experience doing some audio editing, and so she took over that. And we've been at it for we're at episode 130 or something. We're the longest uninterrupted, longest running, oldest Overwatch podcast.
Very nice.
So far. There are some that started before us, but they went like on year-long hiatus during beta periods. Yeah. And we've just been around. Like we're not super popular because we don't crunch the numbers or talk about like very complex things, and we do no promotion at all. We're just doing this for fun. But yeah, the people, again, to go back to what we were saying, the people that do listen to the Overcast, they're people who enjoy the same things that we do. Like because we don't try to cater our material to get a bigger audience, the people that do come to us aren't disappointed. They know what they're getting and they stick around, and we've been forming a bit of a community. There's, I don't know, I think we get 300 downloads a month, which is good.
Yeah.
Not phenomenal, but it's good enough, and these are the people that we actually end up playing Overwatch with, so
Great.
It's great.
Yeah, it's so that in some respects is that element of engaging the audience what we were talking about earlier, and it's that, you know, you have built your own little community there. Is there, I suppose, I've this podcast really so far has only really talked to musicians, so when I've spoke to them, a lot of the people that I've spoke to have said just be really true to whatever it is that you love. Don't try and be something you're not. Don't try and be something. And like you were saying, you know, you have this a very specific type of podcast that kind of just satisfies what you like about it. Maybe not the statistical stuff that maybe some other people would be covering, and that's you know, you're covering your base by the thing that you love, doing the thing that you love, and that niche is what people, I think, like, isn't it? People that people fall in love with things that they think are their thing, you know, the thing that specifically talks to them. So I think that's part of the key, isn't it? Be true to yourself, be true to what you do.
Yeah, and one of the things that Amy and I do for the Overwatch the Overcast podcast is we're both very creative individuals. Amy has an Etsy store. She does a lot of cosplay gear and accessories and like plushies and things like that. And I write. So a lot of what we do is just speculate, try to guess what Blizzard's next move is going to be. And we've been eerily accurate to the point that it's kind of our running joke that they listen and copy and just wait for us to predict something before putting it out. We're supposed to record our BlizzCon episode this afternoon. It's going to be a good time. So it's that kind of thing that we advertise that we do, and because that's what we say that we're going to do, and that's what we do, the people that do show up tend to stay.
Yeah. With your just going back to the writing stuff, is there any like software or any like stuff like that aids your writing? Is there anything that you use that would be something that if people were starting out, that you would advise them to from your experience, that you would find useful?
Well, yes, but I'm going to put a disclaimer very quickly on that. I come from an arts background. I do a lot of miniature paintings. I do a lot of artistic things.
Yeah. And
I find that a lot of people who come into a new art form tend to focus very much on the tools. Especially miniature painting, people will be looking at, well, what are the top painters using for paints and what are the top painters using for brushes? And they'll equip themselves with $1,000 worth of extremely expensive equipment to do something that they would have the same results with $50 of gear.
Yeah.
The equipment will only, the equipment is only there to perfect what you can already do. It's not going to do it instead of you.
No.
So going to writing, I started writing on my iPad, basically just punching letters one at a time with my index fingers, not even keyboarding, because I wanted to write a bit slower so that it could keep pace with my thought process, using the Pages application that comes with the iPad.
Right.
Eventually I progressed to something better and actually writing on a keyboard, and now what I use is a piece of software called Storyist that's available on Mac. It's great because it's available on the iOS platform and on OS X, and it all syncs through Dropbox. So if I'm waiting in lines at Tim Hortons because I'm Canadian and I have an idea for something, I can open Storyist, I can open any of my projects that I'm working on, write down that idea in there, and then later if I'm, say, on the bus and I want to add details to the idea, I can pull out my iPad and it'll be synced up and I can just keep working from there. And then when I get home, I sit down on my laptop and I can actually flesh out the idea and write it down. So it's all very, very integrated and works well. And it's got a bunch of features that allows you to write novels and screenplays. It allows you also to break down scenes. You can create these index cards where you put synopsises of each of your chapters or chapter sections, so that you can plot out everything very seamlessly. There's character sheets, setting sheets where you can put in information about your main character and your protagonist, your antagonist, and all that, so that you can always refer to these things. So it's a very complete piece of software. I have a lot of friends that aren't necessarily on Mac, or even some that are on Mac. They will use a piece of software called Scrivener,
Right.
which is supposed to be, from what I've seen, I've explored the features, and I kind of want to get a copy just to check out how it looks. But from what I've seen so far, it's very much the same thing as Storyist, which doesn't mean it's not better in some ways or worse in others. I just haven't tried it, so I can't say, but it comes highly recommended. So anybody that's not on Mac or doesn't want to get Storyist for one reason or another, like they don't like that the logo's blue, can check out Scrivener instead.
Yeah, that's good. I totally understand what you're saying. You can't buy your way into talent, but sometimes there are certain things that do help, aren't there? I've definitely found with like recording music and stuff like that, that you get the right bit of software, it can help you do your task a little bit easier. When you're breaking a story, when you're thinking about like how, let's start at the beginning. If you're gonna have a new book, how does that process play out for you? How do you? I suppose it's completely different each time. Do you? Yeah, go for it. How does that work for you?
Well, there's kind of a prelude to it. Right now, one of the things I do, every time I have an idea, and this is a wonder of the digital age, because I don't have to have an actual notebook for that kind of thing. But every time I have an idea for a story, no matter how stupid the idea, if it's an idea, I will pull out my phone. And on my phone, I have a file just on the notepad that is just story ideas, and I'll just type it out. Whenever I'm thinking of wanting to write a new story, instead of waiting for the muse to come to me, I go to my pile of dozens and dozens of ideas, and I go through them, and I just reread the document from top to bottom, and I'll pick ideas that are interesting at the time for me. And sometimes it's just one idea that's complex enough on its own that I say, well, I'm going to write this because this is kind of cool. And sometimes there are fragments of ideas that are kind of feeling complete. But if I combine them with other ideas, it kind of creates its own new complex thing. So obviously I start with an idea. And then, and that depends from writer to writer. Some people just like to go with their ideas and just go full bore with no plotting. Some people like to plot to very minute last details, so that all they have to do is fill in the blanks with words. I'm kind of a little in between. I like to have a bit of structure where I want to know what my arc is going to be. So I will sit down and say, okay, well, this is my story, so what's my beginning, what's my middle, what's my end, like what's the event that actually takes my characters from their standard situation and propels them on whatever their journey is going to be, and how do I want that journey to end. Then I'll ask myself, well, who are the characters that need to be in this story? I very rarely start with just, well, I have this character and I want to tell a story. Like, I want the story and the characters to be very meshed together, not because I'd like to say it's because I really love characters, but a character on its own is just, no matter how fascinating they are, if they don't have a story, they're just at home, like just eating chips and watching TV.
Yeah.
They remain boring in and of themselves. They need to have a story, but the story the story itself isn't interesting if it doesn't have an impact, a very personal impact on characters. So I like to create my characters to fit into the story very well. So then I just I'll find the characters that I want to populate the story with, and individually I'll say, okay, well, in that story, how do these events change the characters? So I kind of create a mini story inside each of the characters to track their evolution. If it's a story about how vampires are real, and somewhere in the book, like in a small town, they find that the small town's mayor has always been a vampire. Well, if my main character is this dude that works at the bakery and he's the one who discovers a vampire, well, how does that change his life? How does that change his perception? What's going to be at the end of the book, does he just go back to baking freaking danishes, or how, like, he's discovered vampires are real? What's the arc? What's changing in his personality, in his life, and how different is he gonna be? So I kind of build that for each of the characters. And then, as obviously, like, as you're trying to come up with a story, sometimes you'll have ideas for specific scenes. Like, oh man, I have to have like this one scene where they're just having this battle in the bakery and just destroys the entire bakery, and there's flour everywhere. And like at the end, because flour is super, like, in powdered form, it's kind of volatile. Like, he sets it ablaze and explodes and wounds the vampire because its fire leaves a scar. So that's cool for later. But I need to, like, I'll write down that I want to do this cool scene. So any cool set pieces like that I have in mind, like, I'll write like a sort of digital index card for them. And when I look at my overall plot, I'll say, okay, well, where do these scenes fit? Try to put them where they make sense. And any that just don't make sense anymore, it's like, well, I can't destroy the bakery. Like, that's his livelihood.
Yeah.
Well, I'll scrap that scene. I mean, he's not insured. What's going to happen? So eventually, like, I'll reach a point where I'm sick of plotting and I just want to get to the writing part, and then I'll just say, well, okay, I've got enough. I can work with this.
Yeah.
I'll just start ignoring all of my friends and acquaintances for days on end and just do that. And this is why I'm a very lonely individual.
I think part of being creative is being lonely, isn't it? Tapping into that kind of that state is probably part and parcel of it. Is there anything that really inspires, or is there anything that inspired your new book, or is there anything overall that kind of inspires your writing? Is there anything that you particularly draw influence from?
Well, okay, the new book you're talking about is A God in the Shed, which is my horror novel, which is doing okay. It's not The Naturalist, but it's I mean, people like it, which is really the important thing so far. Although my favorite review is a 1-star review that calls my horror book evil and bloodthirsty, and I want this to be a cover blurb. It is
1 star.
I cannot shut up about that review. It makes me so happy. And the best part is right under it, there's a comment to the review of someone saying, "I bought the book on this review alone." It's such a good review for a horror book. So the funny thing is, the book I'm currently writing was the original idea for A God in the Shed. It's just A God in the Shed. It's a very old book, actually. I started writing it maybe 4 years ago. And it was originally supposed to be more of a time period piece, where I wanted to rewrite the adventures of Tom Sawyer, but with a Call of Cthulhu veneer over it, and make it sort of supernatural. And as I was plotting and writing it and thinking about it, I said, well, I don't have time to do all the research to make it historically accurate. I don't want to deal with the with the United States pre-Civil War, pre-Civil War racism, really. I don't want, like, I'm a white Canadian male as a heterosexual. I'm not qualified to go write about sensitive social liberty issues.
Yeah.
Mark Twain had a past because that's when he lived. I don't have that past, so I made the book more contemporary, and by making it more contemporary, I had to deal with a lot of the technological and societal evolution that made things differently. I couldn't really have my characters go on a river raft ride for 6 days or something. Like, there's a lot of things I couldn't really borrow anymore. So it evolved itself into its own thing. And that's what became A God in the Shed. And of course, over the years of evolution for the book and the storyline and the setting, it became so distant from its original thing, and became so much its own world, that now it's the first part of a 3-book series, and it's got its own mythology, and it's a lot of fun, and it's great, and I love it, but it's not what it used to be.
No.
What it used to be is what I'm writing right now. I feel I have the maturity, and also I've moved it to New England, so it's not in the South, and I've also pushed it a bit further into the future. Slightly after the Civil War, so I don't have to dabble in sensitive things that don't have to do anything with my storyline.
Yeah.
So I'm dodging the bullet. I'm being a bit of a coward as a writer, that I'm not touching on too many sensitive issues. Like, I might touch on them, but I'm this is the kind of thing that, you know, you need to, when you're not part of the marginalized groups, you need to thread carefully when writing these things.
Yeah. You don't want to be heavy-footed.
That's the thing. Like, you don't want to pass for, and I don't want to stay on this subject too long, but you don't want to pass for someone who's ignorant by being overhandedly politically correct, because then you're not helping anyone. You're just reciting a script, and at the same time, you don't want to be offensive, and you want to be true to the material, and you want your message to not dehumanize the marginalized groups that you're portraying. So it's a line that you need to do a lot of research and vet with people who understand the situation much better than you do before you start writing. I read a lot of books by people who are extremely well-meaning, and they want to include a gay character, and that gay character comes off terrible and is a disservice to the gay community, where I know for a fact that the author wanted to do something good. It's just they didn't do enough research, they didn't do enough of their due diligence, they didn't check with people who understand the material well, and in the process shot themselves in the foot. And I don't want to be that person. So that's why I'm being very careful with these things.
There's an awful lot of responsibility, actually. It hadn't even crossed my mind how much responsibility there is in so many areas that you could, so many pitfalls and so many areas that you could be writing. It's the idea to me, and we talked about earlier on, was I love the idea of being a writer, and as you said quite clearly, it's the people that do the writing that become the writers. But the romantic idea of that, I love the idea of creating a story. I love the idea of, you know, telling a tale of some kind. I've absorbed so many different stories. I'm sure there would be something interesting. But how do you not end up stealing? How do you come up with, like, how does an original idea come out? How do you not steal all the things that you've absorbed? I suppose. Yeah, go on. I don't know. I don't really know how to answer that.
You kind of do. Like I just said, I'm stealing a literary classic and reworking it with some elements that I think would make it different enough. And so far, I'm maybe a fifth of the way into creating this new book, and people will recognize some references, but no one is going to think that I just, like, took the book and rewrote over it. And that's what we do. Like, anytime someone says I have a new idea, what they're really saying in this day and age is I have a new interpretation for an idea that's been done, and by saying it in my voice is going to make it new. Yeah. And that's already a lot. If you can find your own voice and you can find ways to retell stories in that voice and in an interesting new ways, you're already doing more than a lot of people can. And I hate to say it, but it is also probably the most that you can expect to do. You can bring up any of the apparently most innovative literary ideas in the past 2 or 3 decades, and they all are inspired by other things, or if they're not, they have been done in another voice before. Even things like Harry Potter feels very new because it's the first time a lot of people thought, oh wow, a magic school, but that story has been told before. It just hasn't been told that way before, and it's the way J.K. Rowling told it that made it interesting. So it's a magic school with a messiah figure, not groundbreaking on its own, but the way she told it was groundbreaking. Yeah. So it's a lot of times, like, I'm on some of the writing groups I'm part of, a lot of people will say, oh, I can't find an idea. Every time I come up with an idea, it feels like it's been done before. And my answer is, it hasn't been done before because you haven't done it before. Yeah. Until you've done that idea, the book where you wrote that idea hasn't been done. So as you write it, you're going to put in your own twist. And if you don't, well, that's another problem, but maybe you're just not that creative. Yeah. But if you're creative and you want to, you've got what it takes to write a book, don't wait until you come up with something that's completely out of nowhere. Just find something that you're interested in writing, even if it's been done before. Write it in your own voice and see what comes out. Yeah.
Have you read the Hero of a Thousand Faces, like Joseph Campbell's book about how all stories are just the same? Like he kind of you can break down. I mean, Dan Harmon sort of talks about it. You can break down how like every hero's journey fulfills this like criteria, and it's the same. Dan Harmon uses the story circle, which kind of hits those beats. Are you familiar with that at all?
Yeah, I read a lot. I have a not controversial, but my publisher is not super fond of how I approach books like that. I like to read books about rules on storytelling so I can better understand how to not follow those rules perfectly.
Yes.
I am not like I read a book called Save the Cat, which gives very precise beats on how a story should be told. It's very much written with a screenplay in mind, so that also needs to be taken into account. But it's very specific as to when certain things must happen in a story. And the problem I have with that, the problem I have with these structures, is that they're important to understand. You need to know how an engine is built.
Yeah.
To build an engine, but you also need to know when to bend those rules if you want to build a better engine.
Yeah.
The idea of following the beats and following, say, the story circle, I need to understand how to build that engine in a story. But if all I do is for every time I write a story is follow those same instructions over and over again, I'm basically I'm not writing anything creative or interesting or new. I'm just rehashing. So the first book you write, yeah, absolutely, follow all the rules, make it as technically similar to what the instruction manual tells you to do as possible, so you have an understanding of why those rules exist. But then for your second story, try to break a rule or two, but not in a stupid way. Try to break it in a way that helps your story and learn from it, and et cetera, so that at some point you sort of instinctively apply the parts of the rules that need to be in your story for your story to be better, without encumbering yourself with the parts that don't affect you and shoehorning them into your storyline.
I think there's I think that's the key, isn't it? You have to be able to follow the rules. You have to be able to understand the rules in order to break the rules to be able to change it. Sorry, go on.
But one of the examples I like to give is it's very, very crucial. Like, you want to have something fly, you need to understand why things fall.
Yeah.
So the idea of understanding how gravity and how lift works is important, so that you can break the rule that things fall. Like, you understand why things don't fly so that you can build a machine that flies.
Yeah.
And that's what you want for your book. You need to understand all these rules so that you can do things with them, manipulate them, and use them to your advantage, find loopholes that is going to make your book fly.
Yeah. Is there anything that is there anything that helps you break through writer's block? Is there anything that keeps you sort of moving?
I'm gonna say the thing that makes a lot of my writer friends cringe and get really angry. I do not suffer from writer's block. It is, to me, an extremely alien concept.
Yeah.
I don't understand. Let me put it to you this way. What's your favorite food?
Probably pizza.
All right. Have you ever been in this situation, except after eating a lot of pizza, where you felt that you had pizza block?
Yeah. I think intestinally maybe, but I'm not sure.
Right. Like, I too, when I'm too sick to write, don't write. But however, I love writing so much that there's no situation where I sit down in front of my computer with a project in mind, or better yet, like fresh on a new project, ready to get going, where I go, you know what? No, this isn't working for me. Like, I will write 2 pages of garbage I'm going to throw out later.
Yeah.
Sure, but I'm at least going to try. The same thing, like, okay, well, I feel a bit nauseous, but I smell pizza. I'm at least going to have a bite to see how that works out. If I don't throw it up, I'm eating that pizza. So it's like it goes back again. Like you need to really love writing if you like. Not if you want to write. Like you can love writing part time and still be a good writer. But if you want to be a prolific writer, you need to really be in love with the process.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing for any vocation, really. Like writing gets this weird pass because there's this illusion that anyone can write and everybody should write, and NaNoWriMo is a bit of a culprit in propagating this quote unquote illusion by saying that everybody has a book in them. Yeah, everybody has a book in them, but not everybody has an orifice through which to pull it out. So remember, kids, have an orifice.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So and I'm not saying this from, say, like a position of arrogant superiority. I'm quote unquote lucky that I love writing so much that I never sit down from my computer and not want to write and not know what I'm gonna do to put words on paper, bad words or wrong words. Like it's not something that I've learned to do. It's not an X-Men power. It doesn't make me superior. It's probably ruined my life in certain aspects because I've chosen to write instead of important things.
Yeah.
So like it's really not a looking down on people, but if you can find a way to fall in love with writing, that's when you're going to do the most and the best of your writing. If you don't have to put a gun to your own head. And it's not because you don't love it now that you can't get to that position. Because I mean, I only started writing a lot when I was 34, like 7 years ago.
Yeah.
And so maybe you're just not at that point yet where your life is sufficiently a mess. That's all that's left. I don't know. I don't know how things work for you guys.
So, are there any things that you'd like to promote?
Oh, absolutely. So let me tell you about my first book.
Yeah.
It's a book that you're reading right now, right?
Yes, Life Engineered. Yeah, it's really good. I'm a third of the way in.
Oh, good. So it's good. You like it. It's a short book. Well, here's the thing. I've finished writing the sequel to it. Now I'm going to be transparent. The book you're reading right now, it feels like it's a book about robots and in the future and stuff. It's actually a book about motherhood. So
yeah.
Enjoy that allegory as you go through. And I wrote the sequel for it, which is, strangely enough, a bit of a love story. But again, it's about robots.
Okay.
And I'm currently trying to trick my publisher, not trick them. The publisher I work with, Inkshare, works on a crowdfunding model where you need to get a certain amount of pre-orders before they will publish you.
Yeah.
It's just their way of, instead of having a slush pile and having an editor read submission after submission after submission, they let the public decide. And the pre-orders that they get is 750 covers, I think it's 33% or 50% of the production cost, and they put in the rest.
Right.
And then they do all the marketing and all that. And that's how I got my start. So the sequel to Life Engineered is called Arch Android. It's basically about it's 100 years in the future after the events of the Life Engineered, and it deals with the resurgence of human beings in the galaxy and how the robot descendants are dealing with that, because they never really had to interact with their creators at all or as much, and now they've got these kind of super advanced organic beings just staking a claim, so to speak, in doing it in secret and being a bit assholes about it, if you will. Mostly in the sense that they've kept a lot of secrets from their descendants, and in that there's the two main characters that kind of have their own story to sort of explain how, like, I'm trying to in this epic tale of, you know, galaxy spanning conflict, I'm trying to explore also how do interpersonal relationship works between artificial beings that are sentient enough to actually be considered to be considered intelligent and emotional beings. So again, like, there's two layers, like the same way there was in Life Engineered, where it's spaceships and explosions, but also like the importance of creating and your responsibility as a creator to your creation, etc. The book is currently funding on Inkshares. I'm looking forward to having it in people's hands. It's a lot longer than Life Engineered. I think it's also a lot more interesting than Life Engineered.
Yeah.
And I need people to go pre-order copies of it.
Okay.
And boy, do I have good news and benefits for you.
That's the
Actually,
spirit.
no, it's because the Ink shares. It's funny because although they're a crowdfunding thing, they don't give us a lot of leeway or tools to artificially promote the books.
Right.
It's difficult to have add-ons. It's difficult to attract people to the book outside of the merits of the book itself, which works for their model. It makes it a lot more pure, but at the same time, like, you can't drum up interest with gimmicks and swag like you can with a Kickstarter campaign.
Yeah.
However, there are some benefits. If you order a physical copy, like, you can order a digital copy for $10. If you order a physical copy, this is something I do that I've done for my other books. When the books are in the warehouse, I fly down to Oakland, California, and I sign all the books for the pre-orders.
Wow.
I try to do, like, for Life Engineer, I signed all of them, I numbered all of them, and I also, for one and maybe 30, like, I had like these signed printed pieces of artwork for robots I inserted in them. Like, I try to do as much things for people who've ordered physical copies as possible. I'd like to do more for digital copies, but it's really hard to sign digital copies. Then I've also got this contest. Life Engineered was nominated for Dragon Award, but it was also nominated for a Kobo Emerging Writer Award in Canada.
Okay.
And they sent me a let me see, do I have it here? They sent me an e-reader just for the privilege of being nominated.
Wow.
So it's a Kobo Aura, second edition. It's a nice little device, like 6-inch screen, electronic paper. It's really neat, but I'm not going to use it. And so what I did is I drew a robot on it, and I'm going to, once the book funds, I'm going to raffle that off to amongst the people who ordered books or ordered and referred books. Also, if you ordered 3 copies of the book, your name goes in the book as one of the as a contributor. So if you're the kind of person who wants to buy 3 books, one for yourself, one for your library, one for a friend, you will have your name in the book. And if that's the kind of thing that you like, it's a cool thing to have.
Yeah.
So that's the gist of it. Like, I'm just really excited to get that book into production, but I've been really bad at promoting it, and I was stupid about when I did my campaign, because I started a campaign at the same time God in the Shed was being released.
Right.
And that meant I couldn't promote both things at once because I don't have the bandwidth to do that. So I'm very last minute in trying to get, like, my last 600 orders. It's not like I need all the help I can get, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Help me, guys. Go order a copy. Do me a favor. Which is funny because your audience is probably a lot of Diamond Club people who already know that and have probably
yeah. We might have some overlap. The Venn diagram might be a bit more donutty.
But you know what? If you are Diamond Club and you have ordered, dude, thanks. Or ma'am, thanks. I don't know what's the feminine for dude.
Dudette.
No, but and if you haven't and you want to encourage, like, a Diamond Club member, or you just like robots and you like interesting things and you want to have an excuse to put a lot of social pressure on me next time you see me at a Diamond Club event, absolutely. I cannot overstate the power someone has on me when they say, "Hey, I bought your book." it's
Buy me a drink.
I don't want this. I'm not rich, so I don't necessarily want to open that door, but I'm not saying that you don't have that power either. No, seriously, like, the people, like I said, I was at Nerdtacular or at Dragon Con. Anytime someone says, "Hey, I read your book," I don't even care if they say they liked it or not. They could say I hated it. I immediately their slave. That's how insecure I am, or how grateful I am that they've actually helped me out. So anybody that wants to participate in this, who wants to get in on this and wants to buy their way into being my best friend, go to inkshares.com/arch-android, and you can get the synopsis, my really terrible book trailer, and the first chapter of the book. on there, and I'm probably going to start putting out some more material as the month chugs along.
Okay,
so
great.
I can get that moving.
I'll put links all over the bottom of the video and stuff, so people can follow that for sure. Is there any just before we wrap things up? The last few questions are: are there any creatives or unknown things that you would like to shine a light on? Anyone that is under the radar that you particularly enjoy?
Actually, I'm going to. This is going to sound cheesy, but I would really like to promote my friend Amy Frost's work. She's an incredible creative. She doesn't have much time to do the creative work, and she's trying to sort of get to the point where she can quit her day job and just do some of the stuff that she's doing. She does a lot of cosplay accessories. If you're a Diamond Club member who's bought some of Justin Robert Young's sticker packs and have received one of those cool embroidered badges with the Diamond Club logo, she's the one who produces those for him.
Wow.
She does a lot of Overwatch patches, and she's done plushies. I don't have one with me. Actually, you can look behind me. She's done there's a Pachimari plushie up top there.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can see it. That's something that she created. Like the moment she saw the Pachimaris, like she's created those and she sells those on her shop. I was recording an episode of Behind the Playlist with Jay Hammond C for the art his artist roundtable, and one of the tasks I had was to draw a mythical creature. I drew a raccoonicorn. I don't know why, but we were talking around the roundtable, and someone, I think it was Nick, one of the other guests, said there needs to be a plush doll of that. And by the end of the episode, I had contracted Amy Frost to make one for me. So she will do custom things for you. She will, and it's all very high quality, very cool stuff. Like that Pachimari, if I squeeze it, it squeaks.
Wow.
Because you kind of have to. So like, she does a lot of custom things. She does a lot of costumes. She's got a lot of very cool products coming up. And the more orders she gets, the more work she has to do on top of her normal job, which is extremely amusing to me. And I have this hashtag called #RuinAmy'sLife, because the better it goes,
the worse it is.
The worse it is. And because I'm going through the same thing, it's cathartic for me to make fun of her going through that too. So everybody, go to I'm going to find her website. Just give me a second.
Yeah.
But I should know this by heart. I'm not a good friend. Yeah, if you go to etsy.com/Daniora Cosplay, you will find her Etsy shop, and you can order. She's got some Battlefront inspired patches, some custom patches that you can do for Overwatch. Like what she has right now on the site is but a fraction of what she can actually do, because she's not good at updating her site. But yeah, no, go to etsy.com/Daniora Cosplay, and please ruin Amy's life.
Lovely. All right, thanks, JF. Thank you very much for joining us for an episode of the Noise Filter podcast. It's been really interesting, and I'm really enjoying your book, and I'll be on that pre-order, and I look forward to finishing Life Engineered for sure.
Absolutely. I have something I forgot to mention for your listeners, those who have not already read the Life Engineered. If you want a digital copy for cheap, you can go to inkshares.com and look for Life Engineered on there, and it's you can have it for 99 cents DRM free in whatever format you read.
I've been really enjoying it, and I'd highly recommend it to anyone. I'm really looking forward to finishing it, and I'd highly recommend it to anyone that likes a bit of sci-fi. It's been really good. Yeah, it's been really cool.
Oh, thanks. I really appreciate it, and I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, no, you're most welcome. It's been really nice chatting, and you're welcome back. Anytime you've got anything to promote, give me a shout, and we can go back.
I'll be back for sure. There's always something to pimp.
That's great. All right, Jeff. Thanks very much. We'll hopefully catch up again. This has been the Noise Filter podcast. Cheerio. Bye bye.
Cheers.